The relationship with your father, much different than that you had with your mother. Your father was 15 years older than your mother, ended up having, I think, 5 kids out of wedlock. They divorced, and when you were in your teens, he basically stopped coming around. What was that like going through it for you at that point?
Well, at the time, I didn't really understand it. As a young guy, a young kid, you don't understand
why
the
he
reason,
wasn't coming around.
Why he wasn't coming around, and then, as a teenager, you start to just get angry, not knowing why and not seeing your dad, But as I got older, and I was able to, to talk to my dad and to have conversations with him about that type of stuff, I totally understood my dad. I mean, my dad, he was 15 years older than my mom when he married my mom. But before he married my mom, he had another family. He had basically had 4 other kids and another marriage. And he eventually left that, his family then, married my mom, had us. But he was caught in between basically trying to raise 2 families. He had, 2 boys. I mean, he had, a host of boys really, but he had a different family that he was trying to raise at the same time and still raise us, and so he struggled with that and went back and forth, from that family to our family. And so I totally understood, and I didn't fault him for it because.
How long did it take you to understand?
Well, when I got to college, I was able to have, long conversations with him. I would just, go to the house and sit down on the porch, and we would talk for hours just about certain things,
And you're a sophomore at TCU,
yeah.
And you decide to call your dad. How long had it been at that point since both of you had spoken?
Probably, a few years. Yeah, probably a few years.
Why decide to call him then?
Well, I think, sometimes, I think you got to do things, I don't know, kind of, when you feel like it's the right time. I always felt like, sometimes, your heart will tell you when the right time is. And for me, there was times where, like I said, I was angry and didn't want to talk. But then.
Why do I have to be the one to reach out when
right.
He's not reaching out and he's my father?
Right, exactly, that type of thing. But then, I had to realize that, what, I have the means to reach out. I have a car, I can make the first, connection of going to see him, going to talk to him, whatever. I can do that. I can be a bigger person and do that. And so that was the reasoning in doing it. I was really at the point where I really was no longer mad. I just wanted to understand him, to understand the reasoning and, going away and, basically not talking for so long. And so, that was what that was about for me.
He ends up coming out to see a game, which, to the best of your knowledge, I think at that point was the first time he would have been coming to a game since you were in Pop Warner football. What was that like, having him at your collegiate game?
Yeah, it was, I remember the game, I was pressing, which means I was trying to impress him. So I was doing things, uncharacteristic of the way I would normally play. Like I was really trying so hard, to make big runs and score touchdowns to impress my father, And so it was, it was a lot of pressure because I wanted him to just say, hey, great game, son, proud of you. But he did it anyway, And so it really didn't matter how many yards or touchdowns I scored that day. It was about him being there and just seeing me happy, seeing me doing something that I love to do, that I've been doing since I was a kid, and that he introduced me to.
Your father recently ended up passing tragically in a car accident. Even though you two weren't as close as you might be with your mother, how hard was that to go through?
Well, it was still hard. I mean, because, you know, I have his last name. I carry on the last name, you know, and so that, you know, when the man that you have his last name, you know, passes away, that's one of the toughest things, you know, that to go through. And, you know, I think the memories that I had of him were great memories. You know, even though there were times where he wasn't a part of my life, you know, that wasn't important to me, you know, really and truly, because it was all about the memories.
What do you think you most learned from your father?
I think my heart, you know, just kind of the kind giving, you know, I think I have his spirit, you know, that type of mindset of wanting to help people, you know, and you know, giving to people. That's what I learned most, because, you know, in the midst of him being, you know, caught up in two different families, you know, I realized that not only were he caught up in two different families, that he was a guy that helped so many people. At his funeral, there were so many people that got up and said, if it weren't for this man, I don't know where I'd be. He was like a father to me. So many people, and you just never imagine, you know, the kind of impact that he had on other people is because of the way he was.